Bojo and Denaway Magonadog. Minogishkat Gizagin. Hello, all my relatives. It's a beautiful day. I love you. I'm sending you love. I am going to admit that I'm a bit nervous about this particular video series, or this video I'm going to do today. I've been contemplating it for a bit, and I've actually put a little more structure into it, and so I'm hoping that it turns out the way I intended for it to turn out. Today we're going to talk about some specific things. We're going to talk about how to find your way to grace, learning the 7 grandfather teachings. We're going to talk a little bit about developing the language of grace. We're going to talk a little bit about defining a ritual of grace. And then we're going to talk a little bit about stepping into grace as sovereignty. Now, when I say we're going to talk about it, I'm going to throw some ideas out. These are for you to consider. These are for you to test against your own understanding, against what your soul is learning, where your soul is at this moment in time. I do not intend for it to be prescriptive. It is suggestive, and I'm calling on you to get in touch with your own soul and trust your own soul in this. I'm also going to be doing some readings from a few books. One is the 7 Generations and the 7 Grandfather Teachings by James Vukolich. The other one will be Beauty, Walking in the Embrace of Beauty, I think is what it's fully titled, by John O'Donohue. And then I'm going to end with a reading from Jamie Sams's Earth Medicine book. Sorry, it's behind me. So a lot to get done. I don't want this to go too long, but hopefully it ends up the way that I hope it's going to be. One thing that I wanted to make sure that we talk about is why grace? Why am I so adamant that we should learn how to operate with grace as our superpower? I believe that it is because we are fractured as a society, and we have been conditioned to be fractured as a society. And we're starting to come together. I think we're starting to see old relationships, old ancestral relationships starting to heal and to come back together. And in order for us to do that quickly and with ease, I believe that we need to tap into grace, tap into that as our superpower to get us there. So that's going to be where we're going to start off from. And I hope you enjoy this journey. Okay, we're going to start off with a little bit of reading from Beauty, the Invisible Embrace by John O'Donohue. I discovered this book several years ago, and I touch into it every now and again when I need a reminder to touch back into how beautiful our world is. It's an excellent book. I highly recommend that you sit down with it and read it, just one section of one chapter at a time, and let it sink in for you. But here's what I want to talk about. Here's what I want to read from today. In his chapter, Imagination, Beauty's Interest, under the subtitle, You Are Not Simply There, You Imagine Who You Are. Whoever you consider yourself to be is also the result of your own imagination. You are not simply here, neither are you definitively and forever you. You develop and change constantly. Each new experience adds to you and alters your shape and image. No person is a finished thing. Regardless of how frozen or paralyzed their self-image might be, each one of us is in a state of perennial formation. Carried within the flow of time, you are coming to be who you are in every new emerging moment. Life is a journey that fills out your identity, and yet the true nature of a journey remains largely invisible. Inside each journey, a secret harvesting is at work. It is as though the beginning of a journey offers the pilgrim a mirror where something is glimpsed, something that is beginning to form as an image. Over the course of the journey, the image fills and fills until finally, at the end of the journey, the empty mirror has become a living icon of spirit. So I'll leave that there. What I'd like to, the point I'm trying to make by reading that to you is that while I believe that your grace is always available to you, it's as you go on the journey to learning how to identify and touch into your grace, it's going to change who you are, and that's okay. You're always changing anyway. If you're growing, you're always changing anyway. And I want us to upfront accept the fact that number one, we're going to be changing, and hopefully that is for the better. It might be rough at times. It is rough for me at times to make the changes that I need to change as I learn to incorporate more of that grace into my everyday life. But the I don't want us to get stuck on this idea that once we've identified our grace and have learned how to tap into it, we're golden. No, we're always going to be learning new phases, new evolutions of our grace, especially as we do it as a community. So that's where I was headed with the John O'Donohue, and I hope that that made sense for you. Now we're going to dip into the learning the seven grandfathers' teachings. Before we dive in to the seven grandfathers' teachings, we are going to be looking at the Village book, but I wanted to read to you what he has defined, what he has written about the greeting that you always hear me saying, which is Bojo Indinawe Maganadog. I'm not going to read everything to you, but I just wanted to give you a sample of what it really means. When the Ojibwe used this word, Indinawe Maganadog, all of my relatives, we mean it literally. We are saying, I am all of my relatives. All of my actions will affect all of my relatives, and all of my relatives' actions affect me. Therefore, the I is not a priority in the word Indinawe Maganadog. You'll also hear it said Nindinawe Maganadog. But we do believe that that when we say this, that we are establishing that connection between everyone, all our relatives. And then he goes on to say that the question associated to using Indinawe Maganadog or Nindinawe Maganadog is, are these. How do I live in a way that brings peace and balance to all of my relatives? How do I live without conflict with my relatives or my environment? How do I lead a life without contradiction, without saying one thing and doing another? How do I lead a holistic life where my actions are in alignment with my thoughts and words? So I hope that when you are listening and following along in these videos when we talk about grace, I think those are like foundational questions. If you accept the premise that we are all interconnected and that we are all relatives and that what we do affects each other and it's a circle, then how do we navigate this world, this fractured world, in a good way that allows us to maintain our grace, to stay in touch with our grace, and to be gracious with others. So I hope that these questions help stimulate some ideas for you. And I think also for me anyway, I don't think these questions have a finite answer. I think the answers are infinite based on the situations, based on how we have grown, but based on what obstacles we are currently trying to overcome, or the struggles that we find ourselves in. So, but when we talk about grace, right, how do I live in a way that brings peace and balance to all of my relatives? Okay. Now we're going to go into the 7 grandfather teachings. I'm just going to give you an overview of them right now. Over the next few weeks, I'm hoping to dig into each one of them a little more deeply. So, as you saw on the slide before, the 7 grandfather teachings are wisdom, love, respect, bravery, honesty, humility, and truth. And as I work on these on future videos, I will be sharing with you the Ojibwe words for those truths, for those teachings. Again, I'm going to read from Yukalich. It's just to get us started, so that you understand what it's based in. It's based in Gichi Dibak Winan, the Great Law. This is what our ancestors have left for us. Gichi Dibak Winan. We'll get better at that. The Great Law, the Sacred Law. If followed, Gichi shows us a way to lead a life of peace and balance without conflict or contradiction. The first word part, Gichi, means great. The next word part, Dib, means to judge or to measure. Akonige means with a stick, like or wooden article in hand. The win suffix turns the verb into a noun. The wood-like article referenced in this word is the okij, the pipe stem, a part of the opwagan, the sacred pipe. Our ancestors included this word in the name Gichi Dibako Negewinan to imply that Gichi Dibako Negewinan is something that has been meditated upon with the opwagan, one of our most treasured gifts. The opwagan is used in prayer to give thanks, to ask for help, to make agreements with other nations, and to seek peace within ourselves. And it goes on to talk about the 4 sacred medicines, and we'll talk about those for sure as we move forward. But yeah, so I'll be leaning into this book heavily. And it's not a very thick book, as you can see. You know, when you speak the truth, you don't have to use a lot of words. There's a lot of power in brevity, and especially when you're talking about native languages, specifically in this case, Ojibwe language, the words are long and they carry so much power, but you don't have to say so many words. That's what I've learned as I've been practicing, trying to learn my Ojibwe language, and it's a constant learning process. So anyway, so the 7 grandfather teachings: wisdom, love, respect, bravery, honesty, humility, truth. These are how we find our way, we get on that path to our well of grace. And I highly encourage you to pick up the book, spend some time with it, seek out other Ojibwe experts with regard to the 7 grandfather teachings. There are a lot out there. They're very closely aligned, even though some of them may have just a little different bent to them. But fundamentally, it's all the same. And so that's where I'm going to leave that for right now. And then we're going to jump into something different. Okay, now we're going to dive into the concept of the language of grace. And I wanted to make sure that we spend some time thinking about how do we speak grace, but also the language of grace isn't just the spoken word. So, how do we, through our voices, through our facial, what's the word I'm looking for? Our facial expressions. How do we language grace to our community and to the world? And I believe that grace, when spoken by a soul who is committed to learning the seven grandfather teachings, that language then shows up as compassionate strength, with a spirit of curiosity, committed to reasonableness, and always informed by love. That's how I would define the language of grace. And I believe that could apply to facial expressions, body language, etc. My question to you is, if you are just starting on your path to grace, does this resonate with you? Do you think that you would find yourself in a position in the future, sometime in the future, where you could say that your languages, body language, verbal language, are compassionate strength, a spirit of curiosity, committed to reasonableness, and always informed by love? Like, would that seem reasonable to you? If you are on your pathway to your grace and understanding your grace, does this resonate for you? Do you feel like that is how your grace is showing up in the world? It doesn't have to be. As I said, this isn't prescriptive. This is 100% suggestive, just based on my experience. But I'd be interested in hearing, what is your perspective on your language, the language of grace as it shows up through you to the world? Let me know. Okay, now we're going to talk about identifying and defining a ritual of grace. The reason why I think this is so important is, when I talk about ritual, I'm also kind of intimating toward a rite of passage. As I mentioned at the beginning, because we've been conditioned to be so fractured from each other, and even in some cases to be fractured away from our own soul, I think that's really important to incorporate a rite of passage, which is something that Indigenous peoples all over the world and throughout time have done in different ways, in different formats, according to who they were, where they lived, what their history was. So I would encourage you to consider your ritual as part of your rite of passage in becoming a more grace forward soul. Again, not prescriptive, just suggestive. Now, there's maybe there's a question, or I was kind of asking myself, like, okay, so is ritual really the word that I want to use? Why not practice? So to me, a ritual is similar to practice, for sure, but ritual is anchored in the soul, and practice is closer to being anchored in the ego. So I believe that what you do is you start out first with the ritual, the rite of passage. You awaken your soul to the elements of getting closer to your grace, getting closer to an understanding of grace, and then you move into the practice. So I feel like ritual is like gathering all of the ingredients for a meal, and then practice is actually cooking the meal. So you do the ritual, you gather all the things that help you consider how your grace, where your grace is, how does it show up in the world? How do you want it to show up in the world? And then the practice is like putting it together as a meal and practicing it and sharing it as a meal with other people, right? So this is what I think my grace would look like. This is what I think my soul grace tells me my grace is. And this is me exhibiting my grace in the world. And how does that work? Is it accepted? Where does it need to be fine-tuned a little bit? What are the other lessons that I need to learn to have a more full grace? So I hope that makes sense. I know, I mean, I'm still kind of working this out as I go along on my path, on my journey to finding my grace. So I do hope that this makes sense at some level for you guys. Okay. Okay. Last little bit, and then I'll leave you alone for a week. Step into grace as a part of your personal sovereignty. I think this is going to be a huge part of human development over the next 20 years. Is how do we reclaim our personal sovereignty as human beings on this planet, where we have lived in a time for generations where we are conditioned to cede our sovereignty, CEDE, to other forces, other powers. I'm going to say other powers because there's a difference between power versus force. I'm going to talk to you about that here in a minute. But I think, and I'm hearing from a lot of folks in the spiritual world that this is going to be a big part of our ability to embody grace, is understanding that we have a right, a right and a responsibility, a right that has responsibilities to being a sovereign being. I hope that made sense. So let me just read from this. Sovereignty is not power. Sovereignty is a force. It's the force of your soul, grounded in the rituals and practice of grace. Sovereignty is when you have become a fully realized, fallible, and forceful human being in the world. Now, as I've said many times so far already, I'm also struggling with this. I don't have it down. I think the closest example that I want to give you guys is the concept that we have in this country of celebrity worship, and how that has separated us from our sovereignty as human beings, as individuals, and sucked away from us our life force. But the window is opening for us to return to that knowledge of ourselves. And as John O'Donohue was talking about, how you were constantly changing and you were constantly informed by the things that are going on. Now we are going to have a different window of information about ourselves and a different opportunity for growth. That's how I see it. But my question for you is, what does it mean to you when I say that there is a difference between power and force? When you think about how we talk about where power is concentrated today and how that power is concentrated today, when we talk about the force of nature, or we talk about the force of armies, how do you see yourself showing up in the world as a force rather than as a power? Or do you rather see yourself showing up as a power and not a force? Personally, I am choosing to show up as a force. Also, Star Trek, Star Wars nerd. So there's that. And that's one of the things that I started really early on this channel was use your grace like a Jedi uses the Force. Your grace is a force. So anyway, yeah, so let me know what you think about that. Be interested to hear what your thoughts are. Okay, funny story. Just as I was like playing around with trying to start another part of this video, I realized, oh, there's a way for me to turn the camera around so that so that the words come through clear for you when I hold up the books. So I'll be working on that next video. Anyway, what I wanted to end with for you today is a call to reacquaint yourself with nature, with our more than human relatives in nature. As Ojibwe Kwe, as an Ojibwe woman, I have a responsibility for Nibe water. And full disclosure, I haven't been holding up my responsibilities or carrying them in a good way. So I have to get back to doing that. And this series is probably going to be part of my ritual to get back to my grace as it shows up in my relationship to our more than human relatives, and especially Nibe. So what I wanted to read for you today was something from Jamie Sam's book, Earth Medicine. This is a great book. I was pretty dedicated to reading it for a bit, and then I kind of got out of the habit of it. So here we go. I'm going to get in the habit of it again, I guess. Okay, this is from the first moon chapter. It's called The Clan Chief of Air. O clan chief ruling the currents of breeze and wind and air, fly me through the updrafts to soar where my spirit dares. Show me the ancient spirits that ride upon the breeze. Let me learn their wisdom to set my heart at ease. You who cast the clouds about, who bring the tropical storms, gusting winds to send me home, where I'll be safe and warm. How is it that you are invisible? And how do you speak to me? Is it through feeling your caress, or is it the whispers you blow through the trees? Have you ever considered the sacredness of your breath? Without it, we die. It is the only thing that humans cannot live without for more than a few minutes. Is it time to count the breath of life as a blessing? I will encourage you to look to the clouds. For the last year and a half, I've had, I guess maybe I could say where I have been negligent with Nibe, I have been more than attentive with the clouds. And I have found that they have been a medicine, definitely, for my soul, and have helped me to actually get a little further on my path to grace. So whether it's the clouds, or water or the trees. I encourage you to call on our more than human relatives to help you get farther down your path to grace. They want to help us, and by our reaching out to them, we help them as well. It is a interdependent relationship. So I have no idea how long this has gone. I hope not too long. I hope it's been informative. I would love to hear from you, to hear what you think about this, to see, do you like this format a little differently or a little better? And what are some things that you're curious about when it comes to developing your own path to grace? So I will tell you what we say in Ojibwe culture, which is Bamapi. I'll see you again. Please take care. Gizagin. I love you. Next video.